Hi, Kevin Kirby here. Next lecture is on the Nike Vaporfly running shoe. Is this really a super shoe or is it all hype? When we start talking about running shoes, I think it's important for us to look a little bit at the history of running shoes and how far along they've come over the past 150 years. The first known specialized running shoe was a Spencer shoe, worn by Lord Spencer from England in 1865. And here it is. It's a leather shoe with spikes on the bottom of to help this Lord Spencer probably run faster. This guy named Adi Dassler, or Adolf Dassler, began making athletic shoes outside Nuremberg, Germany. He gave them to Jesse Owens for the Berlin Olympics, and the rest is history. And now that company he owns is called Adidas. And here's the original spikes that Adi Dassler made with the leather shoe. And again, we don't see the rubbers or the nylon since these were not as invented by then. Spalding Shoe Company in the 1923 catalog offered some different types of leather running shoes. And then we start getting into the more modern era in the 60s when I started running. The New Balance Trackster had this fairly thin sole, but it's hard rubber, very heavy with a leather upper. The EB Lydiard Marathoner was a very popular shoe, again, a leather upper with a rubber sole, again, fairly heavy. And then we start getting to the lighter training shoes that have a nylon upper. Here's the Nike Marathoner, which came out during my sophomore year of high school. Very thin rubber sole, almost no cushioning, but fairly lightweight at that time. The Tiger Jayhawks, Onitsuka Tiger, which then became Asics, were a very nice racing flat during my high school and college running days. Then we start getting into the training flats, the New Balance 320 from 76, 1981, Saucony Jazz. Very thicker. You can start to see these soles becoming thicker. They're now being made of EVA, which is ethylene vinyl acetate, and this was a very popular shoe also, the Onitsuka Tiger Excalibur GT. Fairly soft with a medial plug in the rear foot to give better support to the rear foot. So anyway, these are just a brief description of the many styles of running shoes that have come out over the past 150 years. And more recently, though, there's been a lot of controversy and change within the running shoe market. And I want to review that when we start talking about this Nike Vaporfly shoe. In 2009, this barefoot running fad began, where Born to Run by Chris McDougall was published. Many people read that, got interested in barefoot running, and were told by these barefoot running advocates that barefoot running is better. But if you do want to run barefoot, you should be running in these Vibram 5-finger shoes. And they were flying off the shelves back in the early 2010, 2011, because they told you, and some people believed, that this made you run more, quote unquote, naturally. And then around the same time, in 2008, actually, this brand called Hoka One One, which is Maori for Time to Fly Over the Earth, appeared in running shoe stores as early as 2008. These are a very thick-soled shoe. When I first saw them, I thought, oh, this looks like a clown shoe, but they've become a very popular shoe brand, and there were, in 2010, the ultra marathoners really were liking these because they were great for downhill, absorbing the shock. And they are very thick. You can see they're a much thicker sole than what was present beforehand, upwards of 35 millimeters of midsole thickness, which means that that's over an inch thick. So this was a very thick sole shoe, but it was also still fairly lightweight because they're able to make the midsole foam out of their less dense material that's still a cushion, and it was not too wobbly from side to side, and still was not too heavy of a shoe. Then in 2017, Nike, after 3 years of research, brought its first version of this Vaporfly shoe for what they call their Breaking 2 event, where they're trying to get elite athletes to break 2 hours in the marathon. This event occurred in May of 2017. Eliud Kipchoge, a Kenyan elite marathoner, ran a 2-hour marathon plus 25 seconds. And here's the event. They had the Tesla car with the big wind-breaking timer on the top of the car with this pack of runners, and here's Kipchoge in the back having his wind being broken by the other elite runners in the race who came in and out. But this was the first time the Nike Vaporfly shoe was really hit the market as far as its introduction into a record-breaking type of shoe. And soon after that event, they added on this Nike Vaporfly, but they added on the 4% moniker, since their funded research has shown that their shoe actually reduced the metabolic cost of running compared to other similar racing flats by an average of 4%. So what have these Nike Vaporfly shoes done to the running races, running records, and just to the running shoe industry in general? Well, Eliud Kipchoge again set a new marathon world record of 2:01:39, and this was in a real race, so this was an official time in his Nike Vaporfly Next Percent, which is the next version of the 4%. His improvement of 78 seconds in this race was the largest improvement of time in the last 50 years in men's marathon racing records. Then Kipchoge's countryman, Bridget Kosgei, set her new marathon record in October 2019, running a world record of 2:14:40. And this took and beat Paula Radcliffe's the British Paula Radcliffe world record by 81 seconds. So these are very significant improvements in marathon world records by both male and female athletes, and both running in these Nike Vaporfly Next Percent shoes, which were the even better version of the Nike Vaporfly shoes. So how are these Nike Vaporfly shoes different from other racing flats that are commonly worn in races? Well, first of all, they have a different type of midsole foam, and this is called Pebax. It's polyether block amide foam. It's a new compound that's very lightweight, very less dense, and it has a lot of rebound to it. This is to compete with Adidas's Boost midsoles, which are made of a thermoplastic polyurethane, or TPU foam, and which Adidas pioneered in 2013. Whereas most other running shoes before this time were made of EVA, or ethylene vinyl acetate, which was still a cushioning material, but is being replaced by these foams that are have more cushion to them and more rebound capacity. And why did Nike call their Vaporfly a 4%? Is because of Hoekkamers and et al.'s studies back in 2018, where they compared the Nike Vaporfly here to the Adidas Boost, Adidas Adios Boost 2, and the Nike Zoom Streak 6. These are both marathon racing shoes. They had a number of 18 athletes, runners, who were sub-elite runners, and they found that this Nike Vaporfly prototype shoe, actually, when the runners ran in it, they expended 4% less metabolic energy than when they ran in this Adidas shoe and this other Nike shoe. So this was significant, 4%, and that's how the Nike Vaporfly 4% name came along. Some of the characteristics is that these Nike Vaporfly shoes, the 4% and Next Percent, have very thick midsoles. So there's 31 millimeter stack height in the rear foot, a 21 millimeter stack height in the forefoot, giving the shoe a 10 millimeter heel height differential, or heel drop, with the shoe mass being relatively light. It's just under 200 grams. So the sole is relatively thick. In fact, they're 35% thicker in the rear foot than the other racing flats. This thicker midsole, since it has more cushion, it's able to absorb the shock of the foot plant during the early running stride, early support phase, but then it is also able to spring back and give a spring-like effect to the runner to increase the stride length and decrease the metabolic energy required of running. So this lower density Pebax foam allows for thicker midsoles to be made that are not any heavier, and with reduced weight and increased thickness and good rebound of this shoe midsole, this Pebax material. that is most likely the reason that these Nike Vaporfly shoes have really decreased the running shoe records for many runners in the elite category. One of the other talked about characteristics that the Nike Vaporflies have is this full-length carbon fiber plate. And so we have here as a cross section of the shoe, here's your upper, here's we have one midsole foam layer, then they put in a carbon plate, then another midsole foam layer, and then we have the outsole. And here we have a cutaway of this carbon plate. And you can see it kind of forms into a rocker sole type configuration. And it is thought that this carbon fiber plate works by reducing the ability of the metatarsal phalange joints to dorsiflex during the push-off. And that actually reduces the energy of the body. So by preventing the metatarsal phalange joints dorsiflexion with the carbon plate, this reduces negative work. There's no research that shows that this carbon plate works as a spring, as many people like to talk about. It is not a spring-like mechanism, but it does increase the lever arm for ankle joint plantar flexion. It maintains the rocker angle of the shoe because this is a very compliant foam in this Nike Vaporfly shoe. So it prevents the shoe from not only deforming under load when the runner hits the ground, but also prevents a bottoming out of this compliant PVEX foam midsole. And the estimates are that the carbon fiber plate only contributes 1% of the 4% of metabolic savings seen in the shoe, whereas the foam is probably giving us 3% metabolic savings. This midsole of the Nike Vaporfly shoe is really pretty remarkable because it is double that of other racing shoes. So in the study done by Hookhammer in 2018, they actually tested their midsole of these three shoes and showed that the Vaporfly shoe midsoles deformed almost 12 millimeters, while the other shoes were more around the 6 millimeter range. So they actually are able to deform twice as much and basically give twice as much, nearly twice as much energy to the runner. And what that means is that this PVEX sole of the Vaporfly shoe was more resilient, so it's able to produce a 87% energy return versus only 76% energy return in the Adidas shoe and 65% in the other Nike shoe. And the net elastic energy return was indeed double that, 7.46 joules for the Vaporfly shoe, whereas the other shoes had more in the range of 3.25 to 3.5. So there's a significant increase in energy returnability in this midsole, this PVEX midsole in this Nike Vaporfly shoe. And here's a demonstration I pulled off the internet showing the PVEX ball versus the TPU or ball, and showing the difference in how much better this shoe is at, the shoe midsole material is at not only absorbing shock, but also rebounding and giving possibly the athlete greater rebound during his running activities. Also, other independent research that was not funded by Nike shows that these Vaporfly shoes improve the running economy in the 4% range. So it's not just Nike research showing this 4%. We now have a few other independent studies that have shown that not only do these Nike Vaporfly shoes return energy, but they're actually maybe faster than wearing track spikes in the middle distance and distance races on the track. So certainly one of the researchers thought it may be a viable option for running not only on the roads, but also on the track. And later on, Hookhammer did some more research in 2019, more recently, concluded that the metabolic savings of the Vaporfly shoe was due to superior energy storage in midsole foam, the lever effects of the carbon fiber plate on ankle joint mechanics, and also the stiffening of the carbon fiber plate at the metatarsal phalange joint. So these are currently where we're at with the Nike Vaporfly shoe and what the current research shows as to how they're improving the records, helping athletes break records in an unprecedented fashion in the world of men's and women's distance running events. So here's another independent study showing again, we are showing that these Nike Vaporfly shoes have a decreased oxygen uptake, so this can lead to faster times, and also can change the stride length since they are a little thicker. So they're actually making the legs longer, and this is also thought to possibly be an important part of the equation that causes these shoes to be faster, to the point of where the World Athletics Organization has now imposed new rules as of January 31st, 2020, which states that we can't have shoe soles any thicker than 40 millimeters. We can only have one rigid plate or blade in the midsole of the shoe, and the shoe must be available for purchase for 4 months by the general public before use in competition. So this shoe has really changed running so much that the governing body for athletics is having to change the rules for shoes to prevent records from being broken unfairly for compared to other athletes and compared to former athletes in other years. So in conclusion, these Vaporfly shoe midsoles uses thick PVAX foam that's more resilient, more compliant than other midsole foams. They give better energy return to the runner, and it will lead to faster times. They also don't add weight to them since they're thicker. So we have a thicker midsole with actually less shoe mass. It's not just Nike studies that have shown these shoes to give a decrease in metabolic energy in running, but also other studies not funded by Nike and independent studies that show this, that the metabolic cost of running is less in these shoes due to their energy return capacity in the midsole. And this Nike Vaporfly 4%, the next one, which was the next percent, and now the Alphafly shoes have really changed distance running competition so much that new rules had to be created just because of how these shoes were allowing athletes to break records nearly every month in the distance running community. So I hope that this lecture has been helpful for you in understanding why these Nike Vaporfly shoes are so important to understand their mechanics and why they're so talked about. Thank you very much.